Hi, I'm Ellen Janzen, and wherever you are, you're invited to exist here together with me today. We're going to talk about basic instincts, a little bit more about them. So what they are, just to recap, is our instinct to protect, our instinct to provide, and our instinct to recognize, to see the other person, to acknowledge them, to give them that sense of invitation to exist. And these instincts work best when we use them in relationships that invite the other person to lean or to lead. So one person takes the lead, one person ends up leaning, and in an adult relationship, that should go back and forth. With children, we are the leaders. The three instincts work together to create relationship. It's connection that we need between ourselves and other people. The way that all of this is expressed comes down to the child's senses, the five senses. I'm going to talk about six senses because as mammals, we consider that we have five senses: to see, to hear, to taste, to smell, and to feel. But actually, if we go out to the rest of the mammal world, there's a sixth sense. We talk about dogs having that. What it is on the pads of their feet, they feel things. And actually motion is so incredibly important to newborns, actually to all humans, that we're just going to say six senses, that we have six senses, and include that need for motion, for movement. If you've had a baby, if you've held somebody else's baby, you know that moving a baby is really, really, really important to how they respond to the world. So the five senses, or the six senses, are what communicate to the baby and how the baby communicates back. And it's really important to remember that that is what our five senses are for. They're there for our emotional well-being, for our communication of our needs, and for the provision of survival, how we survive, how we connect to the world. One of the easiest ways to see it is when a baby needs comfort. That's really obvious. The baby has been fed, the baby is somehow unhappy, and comfort comes to them through their five senses. So as we talk about those three instincts, the instincts that we're needing to have for survival and how they intersect with our five senses, and we add the sixth sense, we can see that there's this immense overlap, that a baby is born into the world searching to look at a face, a moving face, and within 36 hours, they recognize their mother's face. They come into the world knowing the sound of her voice. The sound of the voice of a mother will calm a baby more quickly than any other. There's actually amazing research on this, that a mother's voice compared to a medical caregiver in the same hospital who sounds similar, the mother's voice is going to light up the brain in the area of language and learning language within 28 hours of birth. Whereas a stranger, it's going to go into the brain, and it's going to go into the part of the brain that identifies, am I listening to a human voice or not? Completely different part of the brain. So when you understand that, that is something that the five senses, the six senses, are really there to connect, to bring that baby to connection and calm and hope, a feeling of, I'm going to be cared for. So other things as well do that. Tactile, the sense of being touched and of having the connection of skin to skin, that's going to bring warmth to a baby. It's going to keep them at the right body temperature, but it also impacts their growth hormone. There's fascinating research around that too. If you like research, Marcus Hofer was researching rats, and the mama rat got away and the baby rats were left, and he wanted to keep them alive. So he put a heat lamp there and they weren't warming up. And when he put another rat in there with them, it completely changed their physiology. So this is really, really groundbreaking in showing that the fact that the mother is close to them does more than just keep them warm. It keeps their heart rate, it keeps their digestion going better. It has immense impact on the well-being of a baby. So then they took the rat research discoveries and they checked it out on humans to see if it was similar, just to complete that circle to make sure that it was true. And what they discovered is they kept discovering things that are changed. The 5 senses, the 6 senses, impact the whole immune system, growth hormones, how well the heartbeat does, digestive tract. It's all intertwined. And those are really important things for us to understand. So out of his research, a statement was made: a mother continuously adjusts her infant's physiology. So it's not just the psychology, but it's the physiology. This is all working together to give that place of central calm to the brain that you want to be able to carry throughout your lifetime. That also being an indicator of how well your immune system is doing, how well your body is going to function. There is one more piece of it that's very fascinating. This research was done by Mary Ainsworth. If you know that name, she was following up on Bowlby and attachment. And there was an idea that the more time that a mom spent with a baby, the more likely that baby was to do well and to bond well and to thrive. This is what thriving is. We look for a baby's capacity to thrive. Is this baby just managing to get through life? And do they look stressed? And do they sound stressed? Or are they actually, there's a light in their eyes and they're following people and they're joyful, they're thriving. So Mary Ainsworth was looking into this and comparing how much time moms were spending with their babies. What she discovered was that it was less about time and more about response. So the baby would bid for attention. And if the mother responded quickly and well and often, that baby was thriving. But if the baby would bid for something, maybe they wanted comfort, maybe they even wanted to play a game. Sometimes babies vocalize and they want to play a game. And the mother didn't respond. So this would be mothers who are depressed sometimes, just are unresponsive to their children. Those children didn't do as well. And this became, there's a phrase around it, serve and return. And we might think that, oh, we serve to our children, we initiate, kind of like a game of ping pong. We want to walk in the room and say something to them and get their attention. But actually, the more important thing is when they are looking for us, when they are serving the ping pong ball, are we there to serve it back? Do they get to take the lead in that sense? And this is incredibly important for bonding and for the establishment of that zone in the brain that is contented and comfortable and calm. And what we really want is for that in childhood to be well established, because it lasts throughout the lifetime. These two things work together, instinct and emotion. And when you really understand that, when you really understand what are my instincts and how are my emotions connected to my instincts, the more you understand about that, the better you can do at living wholeheartedly, which of course is our goal. So we have these 3 instincts: to protect, to provide, and to see, to recognize the other person. And some cultures would say that those are actually our rights. We have the right to be seen. We have the right to be protected. We have the right to be provided for. And other cultures look at them as obligations. We have an obligation to give to others in these 3 areas: to see, to recognize, to protect, and to provide. And really, it starts out that every one of us are born into the world knowing that those are our rights, not knowing in our heads, but having the instincts that those are our needs. And this is what we are going to work toward as a tiny baby. And that sense of the obligation that comes is a sign of maturity. It starts out as, this is what I need, but it ends up being, this is what I'm going to provide for another person. So as we're looking at this, we're saying that we're looking for the good of the community as a whole, not just to make decisions in my own best interests. And that's at the very bottom of what we need to understand our instincts are there for and how they work, but also to understand what may have happened in my life that I want to now go back and revisit as an adult. So when babies are born, they have these instincts, as I mentioned, and they need them to survive. And everything they do, every movement, every sound they make has a purpose to move them towards the person or the people that are going to keep them alive. And the parents themselves have matching instincts. A parent has an instinct that responds to the cuteness and the tininess of a baby, that moves them to want to take care of that child and to meet their needs. And it's like a dance that happens between the infant and the adult that bonds and brings them together and forms a relationship. What happens is that it's actually this relationship, this response to the cry that starts to form the child's brain. What is happening, what is developing is formed in this dance, in this relationship. And it's fascinating. I heard one person call it elegant, that the design is so refined and so amazing that it's an elegant design in the instincts of the humans. So when we lived in another country, there were a certain number of babies that were abandoned at the hospital. And the nurses would have changed their diaper and covered them up with a blanket to keep them warm and given them a bottle, maybe holding them, maybe not. And those babies would not be expected to thrive. That level of care, of receiving food and their needs met, would not create the ideal situation for a baby to be calm. They would probably be an alarm a lot of the time. And some friends of mine would go in and just sit there. They'd go in once a week or twice a week and hold the babies and sing to them, talk to them, and provide those things, which is much better, much, much better than a baby being in a crib and being given a bottle propped up. That's not going to create a thriving situation. And a person who cares about them and touches their skin and warms them is much, much better. So with regards to having people come in and hold babies, the first ideal would actually be to support the parents so that those children could be with their actual parent. And if you watch the TED Talks and the resources, you'll see people talking about that. And that is the ideal, to be able to have a parent feel the support that they need to give to their child what is needed. What actually happened was that the children went into an orphanage that hired people to be around the clock and paid them to be like a surrogate parent and to create a real relationship. And that's far better than having strangers come in, because what really matters there isn't, did this child get fed? Did this child get changed? Were they warm enough? What is important is, was there a real relationship where the child felt known and the caregiver was actually known, and it was a real relationship that they met each other and provided for not just the physical needs, but the psychological needs as well. One of the researchers says it this way. Her name is Dee Yates. So Dee Yates says, "We are genetically programmed to respond to infants in positive ways." She's talking about our instincts. We're programmed to have these instincts, to find connection, because this is survival. The child actually needs someone who is going to be there for them consistently so that they can build a relationship. Because the answer isn't that the child feels protected from a storm. The rain's going to come. I'm safe inside this house. I'm going to get fed. For a baby, for a human, actually of any age, the answer is, there is someone who cares about me, and they're going to touch my skin in a familiar way. They're going to care for me in a way that I remember from before. There's little rituals that children develop on their own. My grandson liked my elbow and would always reach for my elbow and rub it. That was his calming thing to do. There's a story about the war in England. This is quite interesting, that children were taken during the Second World War and sent to the countryside. And then later they were asked about that. They actually felt much safer staying with their parent in London, even though there was bombing and they were diving into these tunnels to be safe at night. It was safer for them. They felt safer being close to their parents in a war zone than being sent to a stranger in the countryside where there were no bombs, but they were with a stranger. None of those familiar things were happening that brought them to a calm place. Another of the statistics that I got from D.D. Yates was a newborn's brain uses 97% of its nutritional energy for its development, for its brain development. So the brain development in a newborn uses 97% of the nutrition. By the 4th year of life, it's only 44% that's going to the brain. That's how important this is in that early stage. You might be reflecting back on your life and saying, I had a really great start. And I'm in that place that now, as I listen to my instincts to provide, to protect, to acknowledge and recognize another person, I'm really in a good place to start to listen to my instincts and make sure I'm using it for the best of community, for those around me. I can take the lead and I can invite other people to lean on me. And that's wonderful. I hope you feel really empowered to do that. You might, on the other hand, be looking at your past saying, you know what? There is a lack, or there was some event that broke into my life and created a brokenness to this. Or I know my mom was depressed, or my mom got sick and she was absent and I was passed around to the relatives. If that's your story, don't have despair. We know this is the best foundation that a child can have, but we also know that our brains are plastic. And by that, we mean our brains are malleable. If you put plastic into warm water, you can reform it. And our brains are actually reformable all the way to our end of life. We can bring in new things. And so don't give up today if you've heard some things that have made you worry. I have one more quote from Johan Moreau from New Zealand. It's a Maori, the native people of New Zealand have a saying. It's actually about childhood, but I want to use it twice today. I want to use it for childhood and I want to use it for adulthood. The quote is, although it is small, it is precious. That time in our childhood when we need to be cared for, when we need to have our cup filled, when we need to be seen and acknowledged and comforted and given what we need, that time is a relatively small time in our life. So if you're caring for a child, this quote is very relevant. Although it's a small time, it's very precious. But I want to use it for adult self-care as well. Although it might be a small thing that you do for yourself, it is a precious thing. Although it might be so tiny to take a cup of coffee in the morning and say, I'm going to take it in with every sense that I possibly can and savor the moment and feel the contentment. It might be a small thing. It's a very precious thing. You might come to lunch time. Although it's a small thing to sit outside and feel the sun on my skin and let the wind sweep over my face. Although it's a small thing, it's a very precious thing. That's what I want you to leave with today, is that sense of these are important and really precious moments, and you are actually worth the investment. So what we covered today was that we do have primary instincts that drive us to connect through provision, protection, and through being seen, being known. And those instincts work very much in tandem with our 5 senses, our 6 senses, because we added that sense of motion. And that all of these things knit together to form relationships that bring well-being, and that our emotions and our instincts are designed to help us to live in a healthy, thriving way. So in our next video, we'll be covering some more about the same topic, but we'll be looking at how do you create that calm? How do you create that sense of coming back to your own well-being? If things didn't go great in your childhood, it's not too late. We can go back to those foundation stones. It really helps to know what we're aiming for. So that's one of the reasons we talked about this today. But we'll be looking at more practical ideas of what you can do to recreate a sense of coming back to a calm center and what that looks like for you. So we'll see you next time.